Hello everyone and welcome to the Culture Cast. I am your host, Chris Stashew, and I am joined by two people who might know a little thing or two about podcasting. The host of the Projection Booth podcast, Mr. Mike White, and the co-host of the one-season show, Jess Byard.
Hello.
I have a doctorate in sleep.
I have a doctorate in being put to sleep by this movie called Dr. Sleep. So if that was the point of the movie, it did its job. If you don't know what we're talking about, we are talking about 2019's sequel to The Shining, both the book and the film. It's really trying to reconcile the two, said every single fucking review on the internet, apparently. We're talking about Mike Flanagan's sequel to The Shining book and film, Dr. Sleep.
You're magic. Like me.
I need you to listen to me. The world's a hungry place. A dark place.
Hi there.
I only met 2 or 3 people like us. They died. When I was a kid, I bumped into these things. I don't know about magic. I always called it The Shining.
So the film is directed by Mike Flanagan. It is based off of the book by Stephen King, but it is a Mike Flanagan screenplay. It stars Ewan McGregor as Danny Torrance, Rebecca Ferguson as Rose the Hat, and Kylie Curran as Abra Stone. And the film follows Danny Torrance as he tries to stop Rebecca Ferguson's character from absorbing his shining, which is now steam? Question mark?
Yeah.
So that's a thing that happens in this movie. So, Jess, I know you're a huge fan of Mike Flanagan.
Mike Flanagan.
I know you're a huge fan of Fanny Flanagan. I know you're a huge
She loves the creamy desserts.
I know you are a huge fan of Mike Flanagan's previous works. So I am curious, what did you think of his first, I guess this is his first franchise film of like an actual big budget franchise. I mean, he worked on another Stephen King adaptation, but this is the first like big
actual
thing.
Entry into one of the most well-known properties.
Yep.
Yeah, because previously, I mean, he did Gerald's Game, which I loved. I thought it was great for just a small contained movie. Haunting of Hill House obviously is not a King thing, but I loved that absolutely. And there's some of his actors of choice that pop up here in Dr. Sleep. I went into the movie with moderate expectations, I guess. I mean, I hate to answer the question that everybody always asks anybody who's interested in movies, and that is, what's your favorite movie of all time? Because honestly, it changes. It does. I know that's a cliche answer, but it's true. But if I had to pick one, I always end up going to The Shining, Stanley Kubrick's The Shining. So I went into this with moderate expectations because, look, it was never going to be The Shining. That's just, if you thought it was going to be on the same par of that, if you're a huge fan of the movie, you really need to learn how to moderate your expectations. But so yeah, I went in with moderate expectations, and I think that for the most part they were met. I have issues with the movie, which we will get into, and I can't say that I can comment on the book because I have not read Dr. Sleep, so I do not know how loyal this was. I don't know if either of you have read it, but I don't know how loyal this adaptation was. But I do agree that Flanagan does do a pretty decent job of, melding Stanley Kubrick's vision of The Shining with the original source material. Even if I didn't like everything about it, I think that he did a pretty decent job with it.
I did read the book. I know the book came out in 2013, and I think I read it in 2016 because I put together a podcast about The Shining around that time, and I just wanted to be able to speak to Dr. Sleep, even if it was just a footnote. And, that was 3 years ago, so I don't necessarily remember it that well, but from what I remember, it seems to stick to the book pretty well. I thought it was a pretty faithful adaptation, though there are some changes because obviously King didn't allow the Overlook to stand in his version of The Shining, so having the Overlook there at the end was kind of a bonus for the movie. So it was like this weird amalgamation of it kind of reminded me of The Lost World, but I know Crichton wrote the sequel to the movie rather than a sequel to his own book, whereas King was kind of writing more of a sequel to his own book, and this is more of a sequel to the movie. So, yeah, however that works out.
Mike, Ian Malcolm was such an important character, they couldn't afford to kill him. That is still one of my favorite things about the Jurassic Park book versus the movie. It's like, wow, now Ian Malcolm died, but in the first chapter of Lost World, it's like, I'm not dead. What? That's like the first couple lines of the Lost World book is like, they thought I was dead. I legally was dead, but I'm not dead.
But conveniently to the plot here, right?
Yeah.
Not only am I not dead, but I have, black adopted kids or something? I'm like, what? What's going on?
Gymnastics to fight
That do gymnastics. Yeah, the gymnastics was very important to that movie.
Look, there is nothing better than a talking velociraptor in Jurassic Park 3 going, oh,
Alan!
That, my friends, is the sign of a quality film. Directed by Joe Johnson. Look, this might seem sacrilegious, but I like The Shining. I'm not I don't know. I like it. It's not anywhere in my top films. Anything, I can respect it for the craft that went into it. I respect it for the person behind the film. I like Room 237 a lot, which means The Shining has to exist for Room 237 to exist. But that's just the conspiracy nut in me that's always trying to get out. I didn't read Dr. Sleep when it came out, but similarly to you, Mike, I read it, or I listened to the audiobook a couple years later. I don't remember it at all, because honestly, it's not a very memorable book. It's an okay book. I don't know. Stephen King has had this weird thing recently where a lot of his stuff just kind of comes out to no fanfare, and it's just like, oh, it's another Stephen King book. Okay, so...
Remember when he retired?
Yeah. Remember when he wrote endings of books well? Oh, wait. But, you mentioned already this whole idea of the differences between the movie and the book being very different. And from here on out, we're going to talk spoilers. So, go see the movie, come back, pause it here, please. But there's a lot of stuff that's different in the book versus the movie of The Shining just itself. Dick Halloran doesn't even die, which big part of Dr. Sleep is the Dick Halloran character, Scatman Crothers in The Shining. Was it Carl Lumbly in this film? And there's a lot of differences. And honestly, as much as I don't remember a lot of the Dr. Sleep book, the Dr. Sleep book is better than this movie. Because this movie goes full... I think the ending of this movie is just a fucking mess. I checked out at the end of this movie. I know what they were going for. I know why they did what they did. I understand this whole reconciliation between Shining book, Shining movie, Dr. Sleep sequel, book, Dr. Sleep movie. But it's not that I didn't like it. It's just that I had no expectation going into it, and when I walked out of it, I was like, okay, I saw it, and I never have to watch it again. And frankly, I'd much rather watch The Shining again, because I think The Shining is a much more compelling piece of horror fiction than Dr.
Well,
Sleep
yeah.
is. But I mean,
Oh, yeah.
look, I mean, like,
That's
I mean, that's not, I mean, that was never going to be the case, right? Like you said, Jess, no one is going into this thinking, like, this is going to be as good as The Shining. Like,
Oh, I'm sure some people are. Don't you
Oh, yeah.
worry
well,
about that.
those people need to get their fucking heads examined collectively, a collective head examining.
Yeah, and I mean, I would agree. I think that this movie is okay. There's parts of it that I like, but I do agree that it's too long.
Oh, God, like, yeah, holy shit, it's 2.5 hours long. Like, come on.
Yeah, I felt just, a lot of it felt just like people traveling from one place to another with not a
Yeah.
whole lot of compelling, and that's fine. Like, you can definitely do that with a movie, but I need more conversation, interesting visuals, I don't know, something to keep the story moving along. And when you have essentially a pretty huge cast, you have a large number of people in this movie. It's not just Ewan McGregor and the other two people's names who I can't remember at the moment.
Man, they were really
What was their name?
memorable, weren't they?
No, actually, you know what?
Rebecca
I love
Ferguson.
Rebecca Ferguson. I loved her, actually. I thought that she was fantastic, and I would have liked to see more of Rose the Hat. I wanted to know more about Rose the Hat, and I don't know if you actually get that in the book or not.
Well, the book is 18 hours long, and I don't know how long it is in, like, written form, but I mean, Mike, it's probably, what, like, 300-400 page book, I would assume.
Yeah, like you, I listened to it, so I'm just like, yeah.
Right. And I mean, so in the book, do you get to know more about what this group is and who individually they are?
Yeah,
I don't
definitely.
see any reason for us to not have some of that included. I get it that you can't go through. I think there's like, I don't know, 6 or 7 people all together in the group.
knot.
In the knot.
Can you get past the knot?
In the knot, and you get to maybe learn about 3 of them. Kind of.
Yeah. Yeah, well, you get Snakebite Andy, you get Rose the Hat, and then kind of Crow Daddy,
well,
and like
also,
one scene with Grandpa Flick.
Yeah, and so here's the thing, and I know, Jess, because you're as big a fan as horror as I am, probably more so than I am. Most of the time, a complaint in a horror movie is the victims don't get enough characterization. This movie has the exact opposite problem.
I would agree.
Villains have no characterization. Like, I don't give a shit about any of the characters in this movie because they essentially introduce them and then they fucking kill all of them in one scene. And when I say they kill all of them, they kill almost all of the villain characters in this film within a 10-minute span. And I was just sitting there like, wait, what now?
In a really out of place, in my opinion, a really out of place shootout action sequence that I didn't think had any business being in this movie. Or in the book, I guess, for that matter.
Mike Flanagan can't shoot actions.
It's just, but I don't know. And like I said, can't say for the book. Are they all killed in a shootout in the book, too?
Maybe.
But again,
either way,
the book has more time to breathe just because it's a book. I mean, that's, it's always going to have more room to breathe because they've got 18 hours to tell a story as opposed to 2.5.
Right, but I feel like this movie has a little too much room to breathe at times where there were definitely parts of the movie where I was like, can we please just get to the Overlook? I just want to see, let's just get there and have the showdown. And then once we do get there and have the showdown, it's, has its own problem.
It's a bad showdown.
Yeah, I mean, Rose the Hat, who's a very, in my opinion, compelling villain, and I would, if, she would have been even more compelling if I got to know her more. But I thought Rebecca Ferguson was she was fantastic in the role, but then she's just dispatched with, pretty much 10 to 15 minutes upon rolling up into, the Overlook. Where it's like, okay, now we're going to go through all the bit by bit here. Here's the blood by the elevator. Here are the stairs. Here's the typewriter. Here's all the stuff. And boom, let's let all the ghosts out. And then she's gone. And then there's still 25 minutes left in the movie.
Can we talk about the fact that they ruined, okay, look, like we've talked about, Mike, in the original Shining book, the Overlook Hotel gets blown up by Jack Torrance at the end of the book. In the film, that's not the case. Jack Torrance, it's a completely different thing. I prefer the book ending because I think the book ending is a much more interesting character arc for the character of Jack. The character of Jack Torrance in the book is also completely different than in the movie. In the movie, and this is one of the things that Stephen King had a problem with casting Jack Nicholson, is there was never a believable character arc to begin with. Jack Nicholson's character of Jack was just a fucking asshole from the get-go. There's no tragic character arc like there is in the book. So in the movie, Dr. Sleep, they should never have shown the Overlook in the trailer. They never should have shown it. That should have been the big reveal for the third act of the film, was they're going to the Overlook. Like, why would you ruin it? Because you couldn't fill your fucking trailer with anything else, so you're just like, here are the Stephen King, here's the score from The Shining, here are the beats lifted directly from the score right in the trailer for Dr. Sleep. Like, okay.
Well, yeah, because they're marketing to an audience that has seen The Shining and that loves The Shining.
But is that such a big audience that people were clamoring for this?
Evidently not.
I was about to say, the turnout at the movie theater would say no. And to me, it's what Dr. Sleep reminds me a lot of is Blade Runner 2049. Like, did you think, Hollywood, Warner Brothers, did you think that there was such a big audience for The Shining, which there wasn't at the time because it was widely criticized at the time? I mean, now it's like Blade Runner now. It's very critically acclaimed, that people were going to show up in droves for the sequel that you dropped like $100+ million on,
and that you released 2 weeks after Halloween.
Oh, come on. It's not a horror movie, right? We're idiots. God, it's just like everything about this movie to me screams like, we don't understand what made The Shining great, so let's just do the shit that everyone who's like maybe never even seen The Shining, they know the blood from, like you mentioned, Jess, the blood from the elevator, the typewriter, the twins, the hotel.
Now I don't like when I mentioned her. Yes, she just comes in and kind of pops through all The Shining greatest hits at that point.
Well,
but that is not to say that I didn't enjoy it. That's not to say I didn't enjoy it.
Where was the bear suit man? Come on.
Well, that's true. It's not the greatest hit.
Where was the dog mask guy sucking the dude's dick?
That's what I was looking for the whole time.
Yeah, I mean,
that's what Ready Player One was missing. That's what this movie was missing. I want a whole movie about those two.
Yeah, Ready Player One was missing a lot of things, namely a compelling story. This movie similarly has the same problem.
I did enjoy the callbacks. I did think that they did a decent job with those recreating, those moments. And as a fan, it just, it made me happy to see it. I don't hate all fan service. I don't hate, I'm not entirely anti that. I think that it can be done fun. It can be done well. The only instance in this movie that I had a problem with fan service was actually the moment, Mike, you tweeted about the office where Ewan McGregor and Danny Torrance is being interviewed for a job earlier in the movie, and it's set up just like the office that Ullman interviews Jack in The Shining, and it's I think somebody tweeted at you, my exact complaint is that why did you do that when you have the Overlook in the movie?
Because that window can't exist.
It's just like, it was just like, okay, there it is. That's the pandering. That's the...
Yeah, that was fan service, which is weird that they have fan service in this movie.
With the cut, yeah, because it's a sequel. You don't need fan service in the sequel. You're allowed to have callbacks and flashbacks because you're making, the other movie / book, whatever property is attached to it. So, yeah, you should have the expectation that you're going to see stuff from the previous novel, book, movie, whatever you want. But you don't have to have fan service in it because it already, it just exists in that universe already.
And speaking of Ready Player One, I don't know, Jess, did you see Ready Player One?
I did once.
Okay, that's more than enough.
It's like, once too many.
It's like taking cocaine and shoving it into your eyes. It's like oh god, it's too much. It's all too much. I didn't like Ready Player One at all. I thought that it was a fucking mess. I thought it was a director for hire film, but you know what? The Overlook / Shining part of Ready Player One is a much better version of fan service than anything this film even attempts. Because it comes on screen and you're like, holy shit, they're going for The Shining. They're doing this whole, lovingly redone tribute to The Shining. But it makes sense in that universe that those characters are in, why that's a thing. In this, it's just like, okay, they're back at the Overlook, but that doesn't do anything. They don't even give it a reason as to why they're at the Overlook. It's like two lines. He's like, Ewan McGregor's like, it's a thing. Like, the Overlook is an entity. Like, what?
It's a being that needs to be woken up. Because basically, the general idea of this is the Knot is a group of, I guess the best way to describe it would be energy vampires who subsist on people who have the Shining, or if, for some reason Stephen King decided to call it Steam in this book.
Suckers.
Yes, so they thrive on that, and the stronger, of a shine you are, the more, potent your life force is, and it essentially keeps them alive forever. They are not immortal, per se, because they can die, evidently. They can be shot and killed. And I guess they've all managed to survive this long without that happening to them ever, so sure.
A stunning addition to this universe is you get shot once and you die. Okay.
Yeah, and so yes, they do get, essentially, Ewan McGregor saves Abra, who is a girl who has even probably a more powerful shine than Danny does at this point, just because he's diluted his with alcohol and drugs over the years. And they bring Rose the Hat to the Overlook because the idea is that it's an entity that is so powerful that it's the thing that can destroy her. But what actually destroys her is the fact that that Danny Torrance learned from the ghost of Dick Halloran that he can trap the ghosts that followed him from the hotel when he was a little kid in these boxes in his mind. So reason being that he could then unleash them at any point, right? It doesn't have to be at the Overlook.
I guess.
Because if they could appear to him not at the Overlook, you think that he could release them out of the Overlook. Is that maybe that he was is he just trying to trap everything there so he can burn it down, I guess is the idea, but I don't know.
It's not made clear.
It just, like that, it seemed rushed because, like I said, I did want to get to the Overlook because as a fan, that's what I was looking forward to, but then it all just seems really rushed, and I wanted to see the ghosts a little bit more again. I wanted, I don't know. I don't know how I wanted them incorporated, but I did.
The Overlook Hotel is apparently just Murder House from American Horror Story.
Technically,
you die there and you're stuck there. Like, that's all.
Yeah, but technically, isn't that just ghost lore in general? Like, that's why there's haunted houses and shit. These people were murdered here, and now you're haunted by them.
But in this case, like, the ghosts are stuck there, and they can never leave. But ghosts, like...
Except for they keep appearing in their bathrooms.
Right, which also makes no sense. So it's like it wants to have, like, different pieces of ghost lore, but can't decide on the ones that are actually important versus the ones that they're just like, yeah, I can do this, and they can do this. It's like, okay, who cares? Like...
Luckily, I didn't watch any of the trailers, so I didn't know necessarily that they were going to be going back to the Overlook. I just kind of figured that they were, and especially, I knew that they were going to go to the Overlook because of the book, but I didn't know which version of the Overlook we were going to get, the destroyed one or the not destroyed one.
Right, you get a closed-up one.
As soon as they started playing the Wendy Carlos music, I was just like, okay, now I think I know which one we're going to, even at the very beginning of the movie.
Right.
I have to say, the woman that played Wendy, I was really impressed. I don't know if they were using Shelley Duvall's audio or if that woman could just mimic her voice, but there were times when she was screaming Danny where I was like, wow, she sounds exactly like her.
I think it was actually, I feel like it was her. Like, it felt like, I know exactly what you mean because it does sound almost exactly like her, but there was just, like, something slightly different. But, I would agree. I think that, honestly, this movie, the strongest aspects of it are the performances. I think that everybody in this movie who's getting, enough screen time does very well with what they're given. I like Ewan McGregor as Danny Torrance.
I was going to say, I like Henry Thomas. I was so surprised that it was him.
Henry Thomas's wig was so distracting. It was like, I was just sitting there like, I get it. You want to have this kind of like circularity. You want to have this, it's like poetry, it rhymes. Of like, oh, and now his dad is the bartender, and his dad's character's name is Lloyd now, and that was Joe Turkel's character's name from The Shining. But man, this is gonna sound like a fucking controversial thing to say. They should have just done a CGI Jack Nicholson. They really should have.
I don't think we
Just
should
deep fake
encourage
'em?
that. Gotta do a deep fake.
I mean, look, I'm just saying here, like, it's not that I want to encourage it, but, like, we can't stop them from doing it at this point because they've been doing it. But, like, that would be me. Like, you've got a big budget studio behind you. Like, might as well just be like, hey, can we just, like, do a CGI Jack Nicholson and age him up a little bit? Or maybe not at all. Just make him look like he did in The Shining, which would make perfect sense. But, no, it's like, Henry Thomas Elliot from E.T.
And, Haunting of Hill House. I mean, I guess he's just it's his excuse to get, like, little pop-ups of his actors that he likes to use.
Yeah, which,
I mean, I didn't hate it.
Gerald's Game, right?
I didn't love it, but I didn't hate it. It was fine. He did a good enough job with it, and
I more liked when he was going down the hall and kind of like dragging his foot and that kind of stuff, rather than him as Lloyd.
Yeah.
What did you guys think of the ending of the film? Because I thought when they like all of a sudden possessed him, I was like, oh god, here we go. Like, oh, they're just doing the Shining again. Like, if he's gonna kill himself. Like, oh my god, you killed off the villain who was a big villain in the film in like 2 seconds, and now you're like, but no, it's just the ghosts that are the bad guys, and now he's gonna try to kill her. Like, get the fuck out of here, come on.
Exactly, and that's like what I said when I'm like, you kill her, you kill her pretty much instantly as far as like the time frame that she's in the hotel, and
she doesn't fight back.
Yeah, not really. And then there's 25 more minutes of this movie, and it is just essentially Ewan McGregor now being possessed by the ghost like Jack was and hunting Abra.
And how does he make it out of the Overlook when it is just this blazing inferno? I was just like, okay, well, he's dead. And then when he shows up at the end, I was like, well, okay, he's a ghost. But no, he made it out.
Isn't he a ghost?
Is he a ghost?
Yeah, because the mom comes in, it's like, who the hell are you talking to?
Oh,
like, no,
I thought
man.
he was just.
No,
I thought he was just psychically projecting from his apartment building again.
No, he's doing his he's doing his best Dick Halloran.
Dick Halloran.
Oh. Yeah. Oh, see, it's like poetry. It rhymes.
Oh, thanks, George.
You're welcome, Mike. You know what though? The funny thing is, now that I think about it, you could make the case that he didn't die.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you can, because he's, got, aside from the fact that it's just seemingly impossible that he wouldn't be burned to a crisp at the end of the movie. But I guess because, he's got the Shining and he can astral project, we learned. He can also possess people, we learned, which would have been, like, super helpful. He figured that out.
The sun, folks. Ugh.
Yeah.
Hey, you like how Jacob Tremblay is in this movie?
Yeah, that was kind of weird. So there's a couple, like, instances where I feel like they wanted to give you more, background on some of the characters, and that would be with Snakebite Andy. They give her an actual introduction. She is sought out by Crow Daddy and Rose the Hat, and essentially what they do is they go around generally eating all these children with high, shining, but sometimes they find people who have powers that are useful to them. In this case, Snakebite Andy's is that she can
push.
Make people, she can push. She can make people do whatever she wants, basically.
She's like Keith David or David Keith in the Firestarter.
Yes,
I just think of the Pusher character from X-Files, like the kill yourself.
Oh, Cerulean Blue.
Yeah,
I know.
But she gets an actual introduction. Like, her whole character gets a thing. You get to see how she's turned into one of them. And so I'm thinking, okay, maybe this is going to just end up like her and Rose the Hat are going to be the ones left at the end, like fighting Danny and Abra. And nope, we get to see her get turned, get everything, and then, like with everybody else, we just get small little scenes with them that really mean nothing.
She gets to force Cliff Curtis to kill himself. Come on.
Yeah, she does do that.
Who cares, right?
Yeah, the cross-cutting between the two storylines actually got a little distracting at times, because it didn't feel like it was, give me a little bit of this and then edge into the other stuff. It just felt like bam, 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 bam. Now we're back to this. Now we're back to that. And I was like, okay, ease it down a little bit. Maybe stick with these stories a little bit longer.
Right.
And then, to your point, Jess, if you like watching people drive across country, this movie is for you. I mean, we got a whole trip from New Hampshire all the way out to Iowa and back. And then we got a whole trip from New Hampshire all the way out to Colorado.
Which takes, I guess, a day.
Yeah.
In the
So
third
fuck
Game
me.
of Thrones universe. Come on.
And I just want to say, going back to the idea of Danny, I believe that Danny burns up at the end of this movie and is dead and is a ghost, but that does not change. That makes it worse at the fact that, okay, he's dead at the end of this movie. Rose the Hat is dead at this movie. I think one of the cars exploded, I believe. Like, one of them is like, it not drivable anymore, but either way, there is still a car, sure. But now we have this 13-year-old girl who's stranded at the top of this mountain. And how the hell did she get back? Because that was the whole plot point in The Shining, and that they couldn't get down the goddamn mountain.
But there's police cars coming, right?
Oh, yeah, that's the other thing, is the second that the hotel burns up, you hear sirens immediately. And it's like, what about the road that it is, you know, that you travel on to get to the Overlook? And the whole idea that it wasn't open in the winter because the road was, you know, you couldn't do anything. No emergency vehicles could get through it. So that, I don't know.
Global warming.
Right. So. Global warming and technology, you know, maybe emergency vehicles have gotten better at scaling really icy, thin, mountainous roads. Mm-hmm. You know, fire trucks in particular.
Jesus Christ. So here's one of the things that they did address in the book about the Jack Torrance character from The Shining, and they didn't address at all in the movie, and it's a glaring plot hole. The Jack Torrance character in the book, Dr. Sleep, helps Danny defeat Rose the Hat, redeeming his character. Because at the end of The Shining book, he sacrifices himself like Danny does in the movie, Dr. Sleep. So Jack Torrance's character helps him defeat Rose the Hat in the book, and they have kind of a reconciliation between him and Danny and Abra survive in the book. Danny's character doesn't die in the book, which is a massive, and they never address the fact that if you die in the Overlook Hotel, you turn into a ghost and you can haunt people, right? Why didn't Jack Torrance haunt Danny at all?
Right. Well, yeah, and I mean...
Like, why? There's no reason for him not to have haunted him if...
You know why? Because Mike Flanagan didn't want to make Stephen King mad. You know, he had to get the quote from Stephen King saying that his movie redeemed Stanley Kubrick's movie.
Oh, jeez.
Well, first off, Stephen
Which
King...
I still don't think it needs redemption.
No.
Stephen King, no one gives a shit what you think about The Shining. Sorry.
Right.
It's an adaptation of your book. Sorry, you didn't like it.
Have you seen The Mangler? There are movies that you should probably be mad about.
Have you seen... Have you talked to any other authors who have had their books adapted? At least it wasn't, I don't know, The Da Vinci Code. Or, I don't know, let's just start pulling names out of a hat of books that were adapted that were...
With Ewan McGregor in them?
No. Like, one of my favorite books, The Relic, that was adapted into a shitty Tom Sizemore movie.
Oh, God.
And
yeah.
that's one of my favorite books. And it's a fucking amazing book. But the movie is terrible. So, you know, Stephen King, as much as you maybe didn't like what Stanley Kubrick did with your film, like Jess mentioned...
At least you had the likes of Stanley Kubrick making as your movie.
Right.
It's a fucking horror movie classic. Like, it is a film that changed how horror films are created. And it still has a lasting effect. Like, The Shining film it's a masterpiece. No one is going to say otherwise.
Well, not anymore. Oh, my God.
Except for Stephen King.
Yeah. Though we've seen his version. We saw the TV version.
Great. Yeah.
The Mick Garris version?
Yeah.
We sure did see his version, and it's a special occasion for everyone. Is that what, Steven Weber, right? Plays Jack Torrance?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's not good.
It's not, it's not, and I'm sorry, Stephen King, I just can't agree with you.
But, I mean, at the end of the day, I wasn't offended by Dr. Sleep. I was just so meh about it. I was like, okay, adapted the book pretty well, and it did its thing. I think the most offensive thing about it is that it's 2.5 hours long, and I was just like, okay, whatever. I'll never watch it again. There's no reason to ever watch this movie again. And I'll probably doubtful ever really think about it again.
That's basically where I came out. Like, it was an okay movie. It was well made. All the performances are fantastic. But yeah, it takes too long to get to an ending that's not at all surprising. It's just an ending that you were just waiting to happen, and then that's it.
Yeah, I did really like the performances. You're 100% right about that.
I mean, I think we could have, if this movie were 2 hours long, I think it would be a lot more solid, be a lot tighter. I think that we didn't really touch on it, but at the very beginning, we see sort of an epilogue to Danny and Wendy after they left the Overlook, where Danny's still a kid, and he hasn't talked since they left, and he's still seeing the woman in the bathtub, and then we get to a point where he confronts the woman in the bathtub, he goes behind the door, and he comes back out, and he looks at Wendy and says, "I'm okay, Mom." And then we flash forward immediately into adult Danny, like, doing coke and beating the shit out of some dude in a bar and letting his girlfriend, or letting this woman that he hooked up with, like, basically die in her own vomit. And I just felt like then that kind of negated the entire first part of the movie, where we have Danny go, "Okay, I'm cool now. I did whatever I did in the bathroom, and now I'm good." And then it ends with the exact same thing happening, but with Abra seeing the woman in the bathtub, goes into the bathroom, closes the door, and then the movie ends. And I'm like, so is she fine or what?
It's like poetry, it rhymes. Now she is Danny, and she is trapping the ghosts because they were all let out. But, like, who cares? What does that even mean for this universe?
Yeah, like, are they doing anything to anybody else other than just
Apparently not.
haunting them?
And
like, the vampires, I get. Like, they're a villain. They're actively trying to consume and destroy, but the ghosts are just ghosts.
Like, what are they doing? Like you said, are they harming people? Or are they just like, hey, we're here.
We're dead, get used to it.
Yeah, we're
Right.
here. Let's party. Like,
I mean, yeah, is Abra going to go out now and start hunting these psychic vampires, or?
Well, right, because Rose says that she's not the last, after her whole crew is killed. She's like, oh no, I'm not the last one. Unless she has her line, I'm just the prettiest, and that's fine. I'll give her that. But I just, are they really out there, or was she just bluffing? And do I care? Is the question.
Right.
I was about to say, is that a question worth asking from this film? Like,
you know what I would like to see, and if Mike Flanagan had, because I do like Mike Flanagan. I think that he is overall. The only thing that I've seen of his that I didn't really like was Hush. But everything else I've enjoyed, and I think that he does capture Stephen King really well. And I think that if Dr. Sleep maybe was allowed to be like a miniseries or something, and where we could get more individual time with the various vampires and things like that, then maybe it would be a more compelling story, and you would get to learn more about what's going on, and he could maybe elaborate on the story in parts that Stephen King didn't. But that's never going to happen, so...
I have to say that the Rebecca Ferguson character, I didn't even recognize her. I was so surprised when I went back home and looked her up and saw that she was in all those Mission Impossible movies. I almost said Impossible Funky. And because I was just like...
all those Mike on Twitter movies.
Because she looks like Michelle Monaghan in those movies. She doesn't look anything like she looked in Dr. Sleep.
I haven't seen the Mission Impossible movies that she's in, so.
But I have
it was
seen
almost
the Impossible Funky movies that she's in.
I mean, it was almost like I had never seen this actress before. So when I was watching the movie, I was just like, wow, this woman is fantastic. Who is this? Same thing with Emily, what's her name? Emily Allen Lind. I was just like, who is this girl? She looks like a young Helena Bonham Carter.
Yeah, that's that. You're totally right. And that they're like, again, that's the best thing I can say about this movie is that everybody is cast well and everybody delivers on their performance 110%. And I do think that Mike Flanagan is also a good director. I think that he can get what he needs out of his actors.
And
I just don't know
if minority here too. By the way, like
we're definitely in the minority.
Like one of my former writers for the site was on Facebook, and he had this like long, lovingly crafted, prose-filled review of the film, and I mean, look, I'm an asshole. I'm a casual smartass, and I just commented, I said, did we even watch the same movie? And then some other person was like, well, whatever you watched, you clearly didn't like. I was like, Yeah, that was the point. Thank you, Captain Obvious. But Mike Flanagan's stuff is normally good. But we are in the massive minority here, like big time.
He's also, again, adapting a book that, from what both of you evidently are saying, was not that memorable to begin with. So maybe there was just not a whole lot of interesting source material to tap here. And that, yeah, we are definitely going for some nostalgia, with having the Overlook in it and everything. And that's fine. I'm totally cool with it. So, I mean...
I don't know who was yearning for a Danny Torrance 30 years later story.
That's what I thought when the book came out. Like, when I heard that the book was coming out, I'm like, but why? I know why. I mean...
Because it's a
recognizable
thing.
Yes. And Stephen King is, I don't know if either of you have read his book On Writing. I very much enjoy it, but he does talk about how, and he talks about this in interviews and things, that he is a compulsive writer, and I definitely believe that. The man has to write. He cannot stop writing. Whether it's good or not, he has to do it. And he's hit a point, he's long since hit a point in his career that anything he writes is going to get published and people are going to like it. Like, at least a chunk of his fans are going to like it and want it. And that's great. That's fine. Obviously, Stephen King's a great guy. I have nothing against him. He seems like he's pretty much on the up and up and is just, this, nice writer who has written a lot of my favorite, horror stories and has, two of his books have been adapted into two of my favorite movies of all time, The Shining and the other one being Carrie. There's great source material there. It's just that I think that we've just hit a point where it's like anything Stephen King puts out there is going to be treated as gold, for better or worse.
Well, and that was my whole thing about recent Stephen King. Recently written Stephen King stuff has been... did anyone read Cell? I did. It was awful. Did anyone watch the movie?
I did.
I know you did.
I did not on either of those cases.
The book is not great, and the movie is a travesty upon the face of cinema. It is.
The last thing that I read of his that was, post-90s, I guess, post-2000s even, would be Everything's Eventual, the anthology short story collection, which I think I remember being mostly okay, but I honestly right now I couldn't tell you a story that was in it aside from I think maybe there was one about a guy who's being operated on or something and he's awake during it, which was fucking 6 different Tales from the Crypt episodes, I think.
I think, and this is my controversial opinion, I think he peaked at Misery, and after that, it was kind of downhill. There's occasional, all right, yeah, that was all right, but he never hit that lightning again for me.
When did that come out, the book?
Oh, God, that was 80-something. And then especially after he got hit by the car, fucking A, Dreamcatchers is just an abomination.
I don't know what you're talking about. Poop aliens? Come on now.
Shit weasels?
Shit weasels.
Do you mean shit weasels?
Sorry, you're right.
Yeah.
Shit weasels, because poop monsters is much better. Yeah, you say he peaked at Misery, and I would be inclined to agree with you, because when you look at everything past that, you've got...
we need to do that.
The Green Mile, which...
I like The Green Mile.
That's another movie that's way too fucking long. Holy shit, that's another almost 3-hour movie.
Yeah, but I do cry at the end of it every time, so say what you will. I'm not crying at the end of Dr. Sleep.
I have seen The Green Mile once, and I'll never watch it again, because I was not at all impressed. And again, I know I'm in the minority there, so that's perfectly fine. Do you guys know that a Stephen King book came out this year?
I kind of just assume there's 1 or 2 comes out every year.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's the thing. I don't know if I would have to go and really look at his bibliography, Mike, to whether or not I would agree with you 100%. But just kind of skimming over the list since Misery, yeah, I would agree. Just light agreement with you, because a lot of the stuff that has come out since has been just
Well, and here's
Dark Tower book after Dark Tower book on top of
Here's my
else.
Controversial Stephen King opinion. Given that my 2 favorite Stephen King adaptations are The Shining and Carrie, I think that both of the movie adaptations I enjoy far better than the books.
I would not disagree with you. I love watching the movie Carrie. I love watching The Dead Zone. I think that The Dead Zone is fantastic.
That movie is amazing.
And I might be in the minority here, but I love Christine as well.
I also love Christine. I think Christine is one of John Carpenter's best movies, not including his, outside of the, greatest John Carpenter hits. I think Christine is so underrated.
I think it honestly gets forgotten. We could do a whole month of Stephen King movies. We really could. Especially one.
The Tommyknockers.
Oh my god! How dare
the Tommyknockers, Langoliers, and Dreamcatcher, and
I love the book.
Needful
The Stand is a book that I will go back and reread, and that's one of the few Stephen Kings that I will reread. But my God, that TV movie, that was just garbage.
Well, you're getting another one, a miniseries coming next year, I think. So
great.
So The Stand came out. The book The Stand came out in what, 90?
1990.
Well, that was the revised version.
Oh, okay.
Sure.
Yeah, it was 78 was the original version.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't know about y'all, but Night Flyer and Thinner, those are what I think of when I think of quality Stephen King films. Night Flyer.
Monkey Shines.
Night Flyer is the most bizarre premise. I love the premise, but God, the movie is so bad. Miguel Ferrer is like a pilot chasing after a vampire in a plane?
Yep. And I was right.
Oh.
Basically, Stephen King averages at least 1 to 2 books a year.
Yeah, and depending on if
Which
it's a Dark
is
Tower
insane.
book or not, it's 3 books. So.
Right.
Yeah. Ooh.
How many books does that Richard Bachman guy write anymore?
Oh, none. Unfortunately, he wrote The Running Man, and I think Richard Bachman wrote Running Man and Thinner, and 1 or 2 other things.
Apt Pupils, yeah. What was that? Did he do 4 seasons?
I think so.
Okay, but yeah.
The Regulators. Richard Bachman. Oh my God.
I liked a lot of his work.
Yeah.
Rage, Long Walk, Road Work, Running Man,
Rage
Thinner.
was fantastic.
Bachman
the
Books,
Long
Regulators,
Walk.
and Blaze.
I loved The Long Walk. That was so good.
The Long Walk is great.
Yeah.
I love Running Man, but the book is nothing like the movie.
No.
But that's fine because the movie is amazing. Maybe.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. I was about to say, I hope to God you like it, Mike, because I would be really sad if you don't like Running Man. That movie is amazing.
Hell yes. Well, I might point you to an episode of the projection booth that we did about it, where I just sing its praises through the entire time.
I hope that you leave enough room for my fist, because I'm going to ram it into your stomach and break your goddamn spine. So. Running Man is, I would go out on a limb and say it is the most quotable Arnold Schwarzenegger film. Oh my God, I use that here's Sub-Zero and now Plane Zero line way more than I ever have any reason. But again, that's Stephen King.
Yeah. I think I do Commando just slightly more.
Oh. Did you leave anything for us? Just bodies.
Just the bodies.
Oh my God.
Sally, you're a funny guy. I'm going to kill you last.
Right? Wrong. There's, look, Arnold Schwarzenegger is great, so what else? But,
we are far afield of Dr. Sleep.
Well, again, I think this all comes back to, like Jess mentioned, now we're at the point where, now we're in the Stephen King renaissance again, and every single Stephen King anything is going to get adapted, or, like you mentioned, Jess, published, and now they're redoing The Stand, and obviously they redid It, and Gerald's Game, and what was the one that just came out? The Natali film on Netflix, In the Tall Grass, oh, Jesus.
Yeah, and then they did that Hulu series, the 11/23/63, and then, Castle Rock is now out there.
I liked, I did not like the first season of Castle Rock, and I'm liking parts of the second season of Castle Rock, but it's not over yet, so we'll see.
And didn't Verizon do on a Buick 8, or from a Buick 8? if anyone can adapt Stephen King, it seems like they will.
Yeah. Well, and now with so many different channels, so many different streaming platforms, all that, it's just like, okay, who's going to take this Stephen King pie and get which slice?
And here's the thing. Like, the best Stephen King adaptation to come out this year was on Netflix, and it was the Tallgrass movie. Like, it's better than this movie. But that's also because I think it does a lot more with a lot less.
I don't know.
Look,
the inciting incident in that movie is...
look at his filmography on IMDb when you get a chance as a writer. I mean, the amount of announced titles, the amount of pre-production titles, the amount of filming, the amount of post-production and completed titles is fucking crazy. It is more than some established actors have done, and I'm talking as far as how many roles they've had versus how many things he's got in the pipeline right now.
I mean, look, the only thing I care about
66 upcoming projects.
Right?
The only thing I care about is Cujo, Canine Unit, Joint Operation, okay?
Oh, wow. That'll be great. I hope it's as good as that Pet Sematary remake.
It's like, opens like SWAT cats. I hope it's dogs in police uniforms running around solving mysteries.
Oh, the jaunt.
I hope it is Jim Belushi paired up with Cujo.
So this is basically like every short story he's ever written.
Oh, yeah. They're doing the jaunt
or something. Yeah.
Holy shit.
How do you do that? I mean, that's mostly just about implication. That's not...
Yeah, that was like 20 pages long, if that.
20 pages, and the idea is just that, like... Hey, if you don't, like, if your machine malfunctions and you don't fall asleep during the trip that takes fucking millions of years, you're going to feel every year.
I like how there's an abandoned version of Apt Pupil.
Yeah, I bet there is.
My favorite thing on this list is the fact that the Dark Tower TV show is filming.
Oh, nice.
Why? I'm sorry, but that movie, in my mind, sunk any chance of anyone taking that property seriously ever again. Oh my god.
I forgot there was a TV series of The Mist.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's right, on AMC.
Wow.
A lot of this stuff, like, I'm looking at it, and it looks like a lot of them are shorts.
Mm-hmm.
Well...
So it's just, like, people just making... Like, it's literally just a bunch of shorts.
Well, hopefully they'll be as faithful as The Lawnmower Man.
Right.
And definitely one of those on the list in the next year will not be Father Malone and I adapting a Stephen King short story through Dollar Babies or anything.
Well, but I don't mean Dollar Babies, though. I mean just shorts. Just, like, it's just people they're buying the licenses to do...
Well, that's what Dollar Babies is. You're buying...
I know, but for $1.
Still,
right.
You're not buying the jaunt for $1, though. You're buying the jaunt for a lot more than that.
3 versions of Rest Stop?
Yeah, 3 versions.
How is that even possible?
Is that even one of the Dollar Baby ones?
Holy shit!
I don't know. I would have to go and look.
I don't think it is. So that would essentially mean they're paying whatever the full license would. 3 different people are paying the full license to do Rest Stop.
4. I just saw another one listed. Holy shit! Wow.
I wonder if a lot of these are maybe going to be Creepshow episodes.
Yeah, that's what we need.
Yeah. Is that still happening, that Creepshow thing on Shudder?
It is. It got renewed for a 2nd season.
Wow, I had heard about the first episode coming out. No one said a peep about the rest of them that I saw.
Well, he wasn't listening to our podcast, clearly.
That's true.
Oh, thanks.
I was still trying to get over Twilight Zone.
I think he was in China when we started that, to be fair.
Yes, you were in China.
Okay.
You were supporting our new Soon God Emperor.
You're welcome, America.
But, yeah, look, the thing about Stephen King that always cracks me up, his IMDb page aside, is it must be nice to be the most adapted author in the history of creating books.
Yeah, it's like
I don't
fuck you,
know.
William
How many
Shakespeare.
Dracula movies do we have?
Yeah, but Bram Stoker's dead.
That's just one story.
But is Dracula's, isn't that in the public domain now?
I think it might. I don't know. Might be.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I mean, Stephen King, like you mentioned, Jess, like, he's got this back catalog of some of the greatest books ever written in the horror genre, like Carrie, Misery.
Salem's Lot.
Yeah, I'm not going to say it because I returned it on Audible. Let's just put it
Giant spiders from Mars.
Killer Clowns from Outer Space, Giant Spiders from Mars, Cocaine, what is it? Red Letter Media, cocaine plus Stephen King equals it.
Yeah.
And
child orgies.
Yeah, child gangbangs. Oh God. But I mean, at the end of the day, did we need Dr. Sleep as a book? No. Did we need an adaptation of it as a movie? I don't think if it from 2017, 2018 had been as successful as it was, I don't think we would have ever gotten an adaptation.
No, and honestly, I mean, I would agree with you on that. I think that the success of both parts of it have definitely, as far as a theatrical rejuvenation, I think has definitely kicked that off. But I'm wondering if now that Dr. Sleep did not do as well, if we will continue to see quite as many Stephen King things either coming to the theater, or if they just kind of situate themselves as exclusively streaming now. I wonder. I mean, I hesitate to say things are unnecessary, because you can you can really say that about anything. Any story is not, does it need to be made? No. I do think that it's just, if he was going to do it, I wish that there would have been just more flesh to it.
Mm-hmm.
I will say, I mean, look, the way I look at the way I look at these Stephen King adaptations at this point is, and I think everything is eventual when it comes to Stephen King.
But
they're gonna adapt everything now, unless, like you said, Jess. Unless this is the kind of, we're coming back down to earth.
Pump the brakes, yeah.
We're coming back down to earth now. We're cooling off a little bit. But with all these things in pre, post, and current production, can they stop?
We'll see. I mean, you look at IMDb and see how many upcoming projects there are that never actually happen.
All I want is K-9 Unit Joint Operations. Whatever it is, write it.
Now, I will say that book is better than the movie.
That's true.
Yeah,
you get to know a lot more about the people in town.
Yeah, the movie of Cujo is not. It's not.
Well, at least the deputy from BJ and the Bear is in there, though.
Right.
And that is our once-a-year BJ and the Bear reference.
You're welcome, America.
Yeah. So, Mike, what would you give Dr. Sleep?
Out of 5, I'd give it a 3. It's innocuous. Like I said, I'll never watch it again.
What about you, Jess?
I am going to agree. I'm just giving it a 3. It's fine, and yeah, I'm probably really not going to need to revisit it.
I will give it 2.5 soul steam-sucking vampires. You guys said more than I could about it. It's okay. It's whatever. It didn't need to exist. Thanks, it. Now it exists. We'll never... There you go.
But I do watch The Shining twice a year.
That's because The Shining is, again, a horror masterpiece. A masterpiece of a film, regardless of the genre that it is in. So let's take a break and we'll play a preview for the next culture. That's right, on the next Culture Cast, we are going to be talking about body heat. And I believe one impossible funky man will be joining.
I am so surprised that I got that invitation, because I'm actually watching that for another podcast that I'm on. But that is a podcast on Double Indemnity. So if you haven't seen that movie, I would highly recommend you check it out, Chris.
Agreed.
I haven't seen it, so I guess I will watch it. Is that
there you go.
With
and
Lee Jones and
no.
Ashley Judd?
No.
Yeah, I know. It's double jeopardy.
And also, just so you know, Chris, there is a Bollywood version of Body Heat mixed with Double Indemnity, which has the wonderful title of Jism.
Wow.
Which translates to body.
I still think you need to do a Bollywood month, Chris.
I agree.
I have never shot it down. Have y'all seen Entheron, a.k.a. Robot? That movie is...
Fucking A. That is awesome.
That movie is fucking wild. It is.
Oh, yeah.
It is a... So Jess, Entheron is a mix of The Terminator, The Matrix, I, Robot, Artificial Intelligence, and Bicentennial Man.
Wow.
It's fantastic.
With musical interludes, and it is 3.5 fucking hours long.
Holy shit.
I watched it it came out right around the time I went to New Delhi, and I watched it on the airplane, and I was just like, what am I even watching? And
yeah,
it is amazing. It is insane. It is amazing, and they made a sequel to it. It's also the highest budget Bollywood film of all time. At least it was. It probably isn't anymore.
Yeah. You need to see 1978's Don. It will change your life.
Wasn't there was another there's another Bollywood movie that's like isn't there a Bollywood version of It?
There's Bollywood Nightmare on Elm Street called Makal.
Yeah.
Yep, came out in 1994.
Let's see, Forrest Gump Bollywood remake in the works. Yeah, I don't see one on It yet, but I did watch the one on Old Boy and Reservoir Dogs.
Old Boy? Holy shit.
Yes.
There was a Bollywood, it was something I watched recently, there was a Bollywood version of it, and I was like, wait, why is there a Bollywood version of this? But yeah, no, Bollywood month is definitely coming in 2020. Not to spoil the surprise, but it's finally time to pull the trigger, to watch Entheron, to talk about Zoom Zoom Robota until our eyes bleed and our ears fall off. So, until then, where can people find you, Jess?
You can find me on Twitter at writer Jess Byard. You can find me on our podcast, Chris, the One Season Show. We actually just wrapped up our first season, which covered the entirety of 1987's Werewolf, and we are just about to start our new season with a vastly different show called Kitchen Confidential. And then you can find me on a lot of episodes of the Culture Cast and occasionally some episodes of Mike's podcast, Projection Booth.
Need to have you back on. It's been too long.
I know, I agree.
Mm-hmm. You should. She's a good co-host.
I agree.
I try.
Which is more than can be said for some. What about yourself, Mike?
Were you talking about me?
Oh.
No, fuck no. I'm not talking
Sorry,
about
verbal shade.
Oh my
Yes.
Oh my god. Yes.
You cast shade right before he talks to me.
I'm not talking
Wow.
Oh, get out of here. Don't even. He's stirring up controversy, folks.
Well, you can hear me with you, Chris, over on our podcast, which is the Kolchak Tapes, which is coming to an end pretty soon. But then we will be back with another discussion of another classic show. And and you probably won't hear us on Dreams for Sale since we aren't recording that anymore or something.
Or ever. Yeah, well, that's a whole
other thing.
Yeah, well, who knows?
Who knows? And then you can hear me every week at the Projection Booth, which is projectionboothpodcast.com.
And as for myself, since these two lovely folks have already plugged half of the things that we do together, I will say that I do another podcast called Chronicles from the Crypt, where I talk about Tales from the Crypt. And like just mentioned, we are going to finish our little kind of sidetrack into Creepshow because I don't want to have just watched it because I wanted to watch it, because shockingly, I didn't want to watch it.
Yeah, that was it was not worth it to not talk about it.
Yeah, because it was really bad. So I feel like I need to talk. It was like that 2019 Twilight Zone remake. It's like, we need to talk about this because it's so bad. But other than that, you can find me on Twitter at casualty_Chris. Thank you so much to the patrons who are on Patreon. As always, you can find the podcast on Twitter at CultureCast and at CultureCast.com. Links over to iTunes if you want to review the show. If not, hey, I get it. You know, it's hard to press a button once how many stars you want to rate me, which is a 0, and I deserve it because I'm a piece of shit. But
I deserve at least 3.
Just you know what? If you're gonna review the Culture Cast, just mention all the guests. Don't mention me, because as Mike knows, that's the way that the podcast reviews have gone up.
That's right.
It's true. Big thanks as always to Jess and Mike to y'all for joining me, for spending your hard-earned cash to go see this film in the theaters, which is not cheap, contrary to popular belief. And to _91 for the music for the Culture Cast, and we'll catch you on the next episode.